so when divine detours come in our lives and we're faced with these insurmountable, unforeseen circumstances, we can resist the urge to push through and pause. And in that pause, go back to the place where you laid it down. What is it? Go back to the place where you laid what God said about you. Go back to the place where you laid your worthiness down. Hey fam, welcome back to the Journey to CEO podcast. I am your host, Lindsay Ray Perry, and welcome to our sacred space where we are creating a life that we love, embodying wholeness, and owning our experiences by walking in our God-given identities unapologetically. Listen, I am just in awe of how God works. I'm in awe that you guys listened to episode 1, Booked, Busy, and Broken, and I've gotten some amazing feedback. You guys said, listen, sis, I'm booked, I'm busy, I'm broken, I need help. How do I fix it? And I've gotten some vulnerable stories about how that episode really resonated with you all and how now you've identified why you're feeling the way that you're feeling and you want to do something about it. And so it just really warms my heart to know that just me sharing a little bit about my journey could really just shift so many people's lives. And so that means that we're making impact. So thank you for taking this journey with me. I'm going to get right into it, y'all. So just bear with me. When I tell y'all, life has been lifing after or during the process of releasing Booked, Busy, and Broken. I, suffered a very devastating loss in my family from someone whom I loved very, very dearly. And I still was able to push through. I had deadlines. I had a business pitch. I had a business proposal due. I had a proposal presentation due. I had a client meeting to go to. And then I also had a huge proposal pitch that needed to be submitted all in the same week. And when I got the news of the devastating loss, I'm not gonna lie, I really did want to just ball up in the fetal position and cry and sulk and be depressed and sit in a dark room and do all of those things. However, I also knew that I, had to hold myself accountable to all of these timelines, right? That I needed to complete. These were things that I had already committed to doing. And so I needed to do that. And so God really showed up because I did not know how I was going to be able to complete anything. And God showed up. That word that says his strength is made perfect in my weakness. When I tell y'all I was the weakest of the weak, and I was so okay with being the weakest of the weak because I did not want to put the pressure on myself to be anything other than that. And I saw the power of God. I saw God's strength just cover me and encompass me and give me the might of Holy Spirit to complete and finish the task. But I got to tell y'all, when I completed that last pitch proposal that was due, I was exhausted. I was done. And I recognize I still had responsibilities, but in the midst of being a CEO, a founder of LRP Agency, which is my consulting company, and coaching executives and consulting companies and wanting to commit to really speaking life into people on this podcast, before all of that, I am a human being. I'm a woman. I am a wife. I am a mom. And I had to really recognize that once I released the episode Booked, Busy, and Broken, I had a choice. It's almost like when you proclaim a thing, like when you say you've overcome a certain area, I feel like you're always tested. And so I feel like I was tested in that moment after releasing Booked, Busy, and Broken. And I had people in my DMs literally telling me like, sis, like I haven't grieved my grandmother, I haven't grieved my sister, I haven't, grieved this past relationship. And I recognize that I started a business, I started two businesses. I went hard in my career, I went hard in so many other things. And now look at me, like, I recognize I am the one that's broken. And so I released this podcast episode proclaiming my victory over it. And I was broken in that moment. In that moment of grief, of missing my dear cousin, Troy. I was broken and I was faced with a choice. And so we live in this real hustle, grind, gritty, push through everything type of culture. And I was faced with a choice on what push through really meant for me, what that was going to look like. Because I recognized that I was given like this temporary might to complete tasks that I had already committed to. But going forward, there's a process of grief in there. And yes, I believe in grieving in doses, but I also believe in the pause. And so I want to talk to you all about divine detours and what you do when you reach a divine detour. And what I mean by divine detours is when unforeseen circumstances come up in your lives, whether you lost a loved one, you have an unexpected expense, something goes wrong in your home, you may be feeling extremely anxious and suffering from panic attacks, you lose a job, you lose an opportunity, the deal for your business doesn't go through. Like, those are all detours, right? Those are all things that come up that we didn't expect because we set our expectations so high and we have these plans for our lives, right? And then it doesn't go the way that we expect. And things happen. Life is going to life. And what do we do in the in between? Do we continuously push through all of the obstacles? And I am a firm believer in pushing through. But when so much complexity of unforeseen circumstances are coming at you at one time, what does your push through look like? Because I had a choice. I had a choice to continue to do the same thing I did that got me to the nervous breakdown, right? I could have done the exact same thing. I could have went the team no sleep route. I could have decided that I was going to bury myself so deep in my work and in my deadlines. And after I finished my deadlines, because I had so much momentum after launching the podcast, getting all of the great feedback that I got, getting booked for speaking engagements, that I am going to keep going with no rest. I'm not going to feel these feelings. But the truth is, that's not who I am anymore. At some point, I may have felt like I wasn't worthy of rest. I may have felt like I don't want to feel these feelings because it's just doing too much and I'm going to lose momentum. But instead of pushing through, I believe that there is power in the pause. There is power when we pause. We tell ourselves a message when we pause that we are worthy of rest. We are worthy of compassion. We are worthy of sitting still and allowing for ourselves to be nurtured and cared for. And we are worthy to feel our feelings, to grieve. I think it's very important to avoid the urgency to push through. All of these things are happening in our lives for a reason. And so what we don't want to do, believe that we can try to control our circumstances by burying our head in our work, by burying our head in all of the little tasks and doing all of the things and never sitting still and just being and really recognizing that there is something happening in my atmosphere. There is something happening in my life that is here to teach me a lesson. And so what is that lesson? What is it that I need to learn? And so avoid the push through and pause. Pause and reflect. It brings me to this moment that I had with God earlier this year, where God basically told me that He said, I'm restoring identities in this season. I am restoring your identity in this season. And that sounds great when you say you're restoring my identity, but that is a journey to try to figure out what that really means. And I remember hearing so clearly, go back to the place where you laid it down. And so when divine detours come in our lives and we're faced with these insurmountable, unforeseen circumstances, we can resist the urge to push through and pause. And in that pause, go back to the place where you laid it down. What is it? Go back to the place where you laid what God said about you. Go back to the place where you laid your worthiness down. Go back to the place where you laid your trust down. Go back to the place where you laid your dreams down, your passions down. Go back to the place where you laid those activities that you used to enjoy so much. Go back to the place where you laid it down. Go back to the place where somebody spoke something over your life that really made you doubt your existence or doubt your ability to achieve your dreams. Go back to the place where maybe you were in seventh or eighth grade and someone bullied you and you never let it go. And because of that, you've been operating out of a false identity, out of a lie because you believed a lie. Go back to the place where you laid the truth of who you are and who God says you are. Go back to the place where you laid it down. After that, we need to release the weight. And I heard this so vividly when I was journaling after, like, go back to the place where you laid your identity down. And I remember meditating on that word. And then the phrase, release the weight so you no longer have to wait, came to me. Release the weight so you no longer have to wait. And so I literally was like, oh, what does that mean? Oh my gosh. Release the weight, release the unforgiveness, release the bitterness, release the anger, release the offense, release that weight, the weight that's been weighing you down, that's been slowing you down for all of these years because it's been weighing on you. The weight of what daddy didn't do for you, the weight of what mom did or did not do for you, the weight of how your family treated you, the weight of the narcissistic abuse you may have been under in the workplace, the weight of toxic people that have been in your life that you feel like have stolen from you. Release the weight of unforgiveness. Release that weight so that you no longer have to wait. Because it is my belief that the weight of bitterness, the weight of anger, the weight, all of those negative and toxic things that we hold on to, the weight of unworthiness, the weight of inadequacy, all of that is added on weight that blocks the flow of us being accelerated into the purpose that God has for our lives. It blocks the flow in our lives, in our relationships, in our marriages, in our businesses. When we don't pause, when we don't reflect, when we don't go back to the place where we laid all of it down, where we believed in a lie and began to operate out of a false identity, when we don't release that weight, we have to wait longer. And you're wondering why are all of these things are happening to me at once, and why everything seems to be going haywire. And God, we know that everything happens in God's timing, but there are some things in acceleration are attached to your ability to release the weight of that toxic emotion, that toxic experience. Release the weight of shame. Release the weight of guilt. Forgive the spaces. Forgive the people who will never give you an apology. Release them. Release them. And when you release them, a lot of times I feel like as a business owner, right? I remember doing a panel discussion years ago, and the moderator posed a question about, what do you need to be a business owner? Like, what is the making of a great entrepreneur? And I remember the guy that was sitting next to me, he said, you got to have a chip on your shoulder. And when he said that, everybody was like, yeah. And I was like, ooh, that's deep. But the truth is, maybe you do have a chip on your shoulder. Maybe the thing that drove you to success is that bitterness of what they did to you or what they didn't do to you. Like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm gonna show you. But what happens when you show them? What happens when your whole existence is about running on a hamster wheel to show and to prove that you are a boss chick, that you can make money, that you can do this, you can't, like, what is your motivation beyond the point where you reach the goal? What's the motivation after that? At what point do we stop and reflect and pause and ask ourselves, where have I believed a lie that I feel like I have to prove something to someone? Where have I believed a lie that I have to prove that I'm worthy of love, of belonging, of acceptance, of kindness? And so when I feel myself falling into the trap of feeling the need to prove, when I feel like I have to build my business based off of unforgiveness and bitterness and proving someone wrong, my motives aren't sincere. And I'm not doing it for purpose. I'm doing it for performance. And that is where I find myself being booked, busy, and broken. So allow for these divine detours to teach us where our hearts may be hardened. These divine detours come to recalibrate us. They come to get us in alignment with the true purpose of our existence. They come to make us whole. And a lot of times what happens is when we recognize that all of these things are happening at once and we go back to the place where we laid it down and we try to release the weight, we think that releasing the weight is something that we have to do by ourselves, but you don't. You can seek professional help. You can go to a therapist. You can lean into your community, lean into loving and oxytocin producing relationships, right? Those real loving relationships. You can lean into journaling. You can lean into prayer, into meditation, into talking with God. You can lean into deep breath work. You can lean into nervous system regulating activities, listening to music that lifts up your spirit, listening to music that makes you think on things that are lovely and pure and true, right? But resist the urge to hustle through it. Part of what I believe my nervous breakdown came through was because I had all of these different divine detours happening at once. And instead of resisting the urge to push through, I became booked. I became busy. I became broken because it was too painful to go back to the place where I laid down my identity. It was too difficult for me to sit with myself and sit with my feelings. And so years later, when I'm faced with life and life is lifing, when I'm faced with divine detours, I allow for God's strength to be made perfect in my weakness. But I also recognize that I'm weak. And I let him be strong, but I also pause. I reflect. I go back to the place where I laid down my identity, where I may have believed a lie. I allow for God to restore me in that. I lean into my therapist. I lean into my husband. I lean into loving relationships and my homies, my girls, my community. I lean into stillness and quiet. I lean into solitude. I lean into prayer and meditation. I lean into reading a really, really good book. I lean into taking a nap. I lean into watching old episodes of Insecure. Whatever it is, I release the weight and the expectation of needing to prove myself to anyone. That I don't have to fall into this demonic system that says I am a machine, because I'm not. I am a being, and in my being, I deserve rest. I deserve care. I deserve compassion. I deserve to nurture my grief and to move forward and to move past it and to let those feelings and those emotions come through like a wave and to release them. Because if I don't, I'm going to be running on a hamster wheel. And I may find myself being triggered by the slightest thing that can literally be the thing that causes me to break down. I don't want that for myself, and I don't want that for you. So, when divine detours come, don't be afraid to be still and know that the same God that's blessing you in all of your busyness and your momentum is the same God that will bless you in your rest. I love y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch y'all next time. Hey fam, thank you for listening to today's episode, Divine Detours, on the Journey to CEO podcast. Again, if this episode resonated with you, I want you to go rate, comment, review, subscribe. Hit me up in my DMs. Let me know. You can find me on all social media platforms at Lindsay Ray Perry. If you want to head over to my website and subscribe to any upcoming updates, any news, I am going to be dropping a new community soon, so please be on the lookout for that. You can head over to lindsayrayperry.com, and I am just so grateful that you are taking this journey with me. And remember, you are worthy of rest. You are worthy of a pause. You are worthy to reflect so that you can course correct and accelerate into God's purpose for your life. I pray above all things that you prosper and that you are creating a life that you love, you embody wholeness, and you are owning your experiences by walking in your God-given identity unapologetically. It's all love. See you later.